Hello and a warm welcome. You're watching South Central with me, Jude Sanath. And that means you're also watching India's first and only business news bulletin to cover everything making news across South India, only on ET Now. There's a lot to unpack on the show today, but first, the headlines. The DMK student wing stages protests against the TVK-led Tamil Nadu government in Chennai. The party is demanding the resignation of TVK Minister D. Sarath Kumar over allegations of drug abuse. After telling couples in Andhra Pradesh to have more children, Chandrababu Naidu now calls for a revival of the joint family system. The Chief Minister claims joint families come with shared value systems and emotional support. India's knitwear capital Tirupur hits a record. Despite geopolitical uncertainty through FY26, the textile town generates an export bill of 46,000 crore rupees in garment exports for the fiscal. That's 3% higher than the previous year. Vizag-based Wadi Surgicals accuses Indian importers of enabling dumping of substandard surgical gloves in the Indian market. The company calls for the implementation of a quality control order to stem the influx of cheap glove imports. And South India's housing story continues staying strong. Data from Anurag reveals that Bengaluru and Hyderabad continue to see year-on-year growth in residential sales. Chennai, however, sees a 9% decline in these numbers. A top story first. The DMK student wing has staged widespread protests against the TVK-led government in Tamil Nadu. In fact, earlier today, protesters called for the dismissal of the state human resources development minister, the TVK's D. Sarath Kumar, over a 2-year-old video that has the minister appearing to consume a banned substance. In a video that has ever since resurfaced online, shared on Sarath Kumar's own Instagram back when he first uploaded it as a story 2 years ago, the minister is seen to be making lines of what appears to be cocaine with the caption "Thug Life" written on the Instagram story itself. The DMK has since accused Sarath Kumar of being a hypocrite, since it was only last weekend that the Tamil Nadu government, led by Chief Minister Vijay, embarked on a half marathon of sorts to raise awareness against drug abuse. The minister, however, has clarified that he was sorting out his child's medication since the infant could not swallow an entire pill, because of which it had to be powdered. But earlier today, multiple DMK leaders, including former ministers and Chennai's mayor, Priya Rajan, turned up at the protests against the TVK minister. Many of them, including the mayor, were detained, citing law and order. In fact, my colleague Dharani sent us this report from those protests.
Students wing is holding a protest near the Rajaratnam Stadium here in Chennai, demanding the resignation of Minister Sarath Kumar, who was seen handling a white-colored substance in a viral video, which many claim to be drugs. In fact, the police had not given permission for the GMK students wing to undertake this protest. For any protest in Tamil Nadu, protesters have to apply for permission 5 days prior. But the GMK sought for permission in the last minute for this protest, and for that reason the police had not given permission for this particular protest by the GMK. But despite denial of permission, we are seeing a few DMK supporters here, especially from the DMK students wing, who have gathered here to protest, demanding the resignation of Mr. Sarath Kumar. Remember, in a viral video, Minister Sarath Kumar of the TVK, he was seen handling a white-colored substance. In fact, he was trying to arrange a white-color substance with the help of a bank card, a 500 rupees note and a mobile phone. So this video has been going viral for the past 3 days, and the opposition parties, that is the GMK and the ADMK, they are claiming that Mr. Sarath Kumar was handling drugs. He was using drugs in an IPL match, during an IPL match, is what the opposition parties are claiming at this point in time. But Sarath Kumar has put out a clarification video in which he is telling that it was not drugs, and it was in fact a pill. pill. His child was not swallowing a pill as it is fully. So he was crushing the pill to feed her is what Sarath Kumar is telling in his clarification video. But in fact, many people, they are refusing to believe in this clarification. They are questioning why a pill is going to be given to a toddler by a doctor, because usually for toddlers only syrups are being preferred and given. So why will a doctor give a pill for a toddler who is 1 or 1.5 years old at that time is the question that is being raised by many.
Well, shifting focus to Andhra Pradesh next, Chief Minister Chandrababu Naidu has called for the revival of the traditional joint family system, saying it plays a vital role in instilling values and providing emotional support to children. Now, the Chief Minister's remarks come even as he has repeatedly urged couples in Andhra Pradesh to have more children, warning that declining fertility rates could pose long-term demographic challenges. Speaking during the launch of the state's pulse polio immunization drive, Chandrababu Naidu also called on fathers to play a more active role in parenting, arguing that stronger family support is essential for raising the next generation. India's knitwear capital Tirupur, meanwhile, has hit a new milestone. The textile town exported garments worth a record 46,000 crore rupees in FY26. That's up by about 3% from the 44,747 crore rupees it exported just the previous year. Now, the record is special, remember, because it comes despite uncertainty triggered by higher US tariffs and the West Asia conflict through most of FY26 itself. The Tirupur Exporters Association has now set an ambitious target of 1 lakh crore rupees worth of exports by 2030. The cluster, remember, currently accounts for nearly 60% of India's knitwear exports and supports employment for more than 1 million people, all in that tiny textile town. On to our South Central exclusive next. Just earlier this month, the Maharashtra FDA detected what it claimed were unsterilized surgical gloves being supplied to government hospitals. The findings have raised serious questions over the credibility and sterility of India's medical supply chain, quality control and regulatory oversight. The spotlight on these supplies also comes at a time when glove makers in the country have been alleging that dumping of substandard surgical glove imports has been an ongoing occurrence in the Indian market. Multiple players, including Vizag-based Wadi Surgicals, have claimed that cheap imported gloves have been imported in bulk, dumped in the Indian market, relabeled as sterile before making their way to the hospital supply chain. Now, while an investigation is underway, a larger debate has emerged over the country's dependence on imported medical gloves and the practice of importing these products in bulk. Wadi Surgicals, for one, the makers of Enliva nitrile gloves, has called for the implementation of an existing quality control order which could bring an end to the dumping. So joining us now to discuss this in detail is Shaz Mahmood, promoter and director at Wadi Surgicals. Shaz, good to have you with us here on South Central. Now, the situation that we're talking about isn't exactly new. In fact, we've spoken about it before. Most recently, there was that seizure of substandard surgical gloves in Mumbai. You've been an ardent campaigner against the dumping of these imported gloves in the Indian market. What's the problem we're dealing with here, really?
A lot of the large manufacturers of Malaysia have now understood what's happening, and they're not really supporting this dumping. They're making sure that they themselves send boxed, good quality gloves into India. It's the Malaysian exporters who are now picking up, or the Thailand exporters who are picking up B-grade gloves, because Indian importers are going and asking for very low prices and bringing these gloves into India. What we're noticing is the majority of these gloves are now coming as non-medical, because then you can completely bypass the testing at the port and then getting repacked here and being sold into healthcare facilities. And that is the bottom line, actually, that in spite of having domestic capacity, people are not taking this PPE very seriously. And we saw what happened. It took an FDA to raid to find out, and then some silly excuse that the machine was not working and was not beeping. But end of the day, it's an unsterile glove that reached a hospital OT and we don't know what were the infections that patient carried. And these really need to be taken up at a war footing front to control the quality and ensure that the sanctity of the medical device is maintained in India.
So could you help us understand where the oversight is taking place, Shaz? When you say there is a unified approach to ensuring there is no dumping of surgical glove imports and there are concerns that exist over unsterile gloves making it past Indian borders, at which stage of the process is this oversight occurring, which brings us to where we are today?
So I think, Jude, the stage is that firstly, India is perhaps the only country which is allowing gloves to be brought in bulk quantities, which means they come in gunny bags. I don't know any developed or a good big country which allows gloves to be brought in gunny bags and then get repacked in this country. I don't know. But India is allowing that. And I think that is what is the crux of the problem, and that needs to stop. Because if that stops, then you're getting a box glove which has all declarations mentioned. And tomorrow, if any authorities want to pick up and test it, they can trace it back to the manufacturer and tally any of the certifications that the manufacturer has disclosed. But that's not happening. And I think that is what needs to be stopped first. The bulk gloves have to be stopped at the port, and then you get in to impose in what quality standards to follow.
So what's the solution at hand, and where does the road lead to from here? Now, I know you've been a campaigner against this dumping, as has the industry at large, especially those with concerns over sterility and the best hygiene practices. But where do you see this progressing from where we find ourselves in at this time and place?
Jude, there are a few policy changes that need to happen. Number one is there has to be a blanket ban on these bulk gloves coming in, whether it's medical or non-medical. I don't think anybody wants gloves thrown around on the floor and then repacked in a box, because nobody washes gloves before using them. They expect it to be of a clean nature. So that's number one. Number two is we've been asking for a quality control order, which is already published on the World Trade Organization as early as February 25, but has remained unsigned. And I think that will bring about some sanity in the healthcare space, because an ISI mark and a BIS registration of the factory is mandatory to make the glove, identifiable. Third, we are already, in terms of an industry survival mechanism, we've already filed an anti-dumping case. We are waiting for the final outcome because we do see gloves being imported and dumped into India at prices lower than manufacturing costs in India itself. So the dumping margins are there. So we're expecting this to happen. The whole case is filed. We're waiting for the final order. The final thing that we're really wanting is an awareness campaign that goes across saying, let's not compromise patient or food safety by using gloves where we don't know where they come from. Why are we using it? Might as well use open hands. The whole idea of using gloves is to make sure that the person who's wearing it feels protected, and the person who's being touched was being operated on is feeling clean about it, that the product has been of a good quality. Here we have nothing. So it's defeating the purpose. So I think if a 4-part strategy is worked out, 3 with policy, 1 with advocacy and more of noise making, where the industry talks about it and the users talk about it, I think we'll be in safe hands.
I'm glad you bring up that quality control order itself, Shaz, because let's set the record straight. It's already part of the World Trade Organization. The fact is, though, that it's yet to be implemented as far as the import of these surgical gloves is concerned. So let's talk about that QCO for a bit. Where is the resistance really towards actually seeing it through, having it signed and implemented? Do you see resistance from certain parts of the ecosystem towards making that QCO a reality?
So it's very funny you asked that question. So quality control orders, if you understand, make BIS mandatory. BIS already has published standards. There have been several quality control orders published. Of lately, the government has gone a bit slow on quality control orders because they faced a little resistance, particularly from some industries like steel. Now, where they ended up putting a quality control order was on the raw material. Now, that's very different from what we are asking. We are asking a quality control on the finished product, like how it's on toys. So in the steel industry, they put it on raw steel, which created a lot of supply shortages in the market. So I see that one is that I think the department is now understanding the gravity of the situation and is now looking at signing this quality control order, because the stakeholder discussions have happened. 3 years we've discussed, we've all come together. The draft order was published. It was even answered in the parliament when a question was asked about this order. And it's been published on the World Trade Organization. It just finally needs a date of implementation and signature on it. So the whole the stakeholder consultations is also done. So I think the order is just about to happen. The resistance is definitely coming from importers because they won't be able to import in these gunny bags. The international players will have to make a glove which is off BIS standard, which is not what they make generally for America. And I think some select large importers who are perhaps going to lose out on this high profitability, that they're resisting the quality control order. I think in terms of domestic manufacturers, we are all BIS registered. In fact, the top 3 manufacturers of gloves in the world, Top Glove, Hartalega, and Sreetime, they have taken BIS licenses. They are also ready to send the glove in BIS format. It's just about a quality control order that will solve everybody's problem. If there's an ISI mark with a number of the factory, it makes testing easy. It makes checking at the port easy whether we should allow this glove in or no. So I think that's one of the pushes we're really wanting to happen soon to save this industry.
Right. So the way I see it, there are 2 issues that we're dealing with here. The economic impact of that dumping and the hygiene impact that we've been discussing, that, the dumping of substandard gloves has on safety and hygiene, especially within the domestic supply chain at hospitals. But the fact is, it's also greatly impacting domestic manufacturers, much like yourself. So could you give us a brief estimate of how badly the dumping of substandard gloves has impacted your manufacturing top lines, and how has production been hit really on account of orders not coming through because of large imports, and how has this particularly affected you?
Jude, India historically has had 18 surgical manufacturers which do natural rubber, and post-COVID, about 5-6 of us who came into the nitrile space, putting in a lot of money. Now, each production line roughly costs about 45-50 crores with the whole plant and the building and the land. So we all put in significant amounts of money. It's unfortunate to see a lot of Kerala players now shutting down because a lot of the gloves are now being imported, even the surgical gloves, because it's just cheaper to import than to make in India. Similarly, when you look at nitrile, while our companies had we have a good culture and we're building a good company, we're still bleeding. We've been bleeding for the last 4 years in spite of putting heavy capital. But what we're worried about is these erratic sales that end up happening, because 1 month suddenly you'll have 10 containers of gloves that have been cleared, and that month nobody will buy from us. And then the next month when we've spoken, we've kind of tightened up the port, then the domestic industry starts buying from us. But this kind of erratic behavior is getting very difficult. At the same time, people are taking licenses which are not really manufacturing licenses and wrongly disclosing them into the government tenders and getting those contracts and getting awarded. Then we have to, as an association, write and tell them that, this is not even a manufacturer. And then, everything just gets delayed. So it's not very exciting for anybody to get into manufacturing today in India. We employ a large number of people, and I think manufacturing has the power to solve the unemployment problem of this country. But if we don't have swift policy changes and we don't have these regulated imports, it's going to go nowhere, and especially at a time in world crisis when we're looking at conserving the foreign outflow. If we're still going to be exporting out 1,000 crores to buy gloves when we have domestic capacity to manufacture, I think it's very silly what we're doing.
And just to be clear, Shaz, you've said you're bleeding, so could you give us an estimate of how much these losses are and whether or not they're actually going about mounting?
I think, Jude, from our side, obviously the curve we're trying to flatten. When we started the first year, of course, we had about 7-8 crores of loss in spite of putting the money, but we've tried to bring that down, but we're still losing.
Well, Shaz Mahmood, thank you there for joining us and breaking down the issue at hand. The fact is there are multiple gaps when it comes to India's surgical glove supply chain that are being exacerbated by the large-scale dumping of what multiple manufacturers are calling cheap imports, and one that is not only having an impact on the hygiene and safety standards being employed in hospitals and other healthcare institutes, but also greatly impacting the local manufacturing ecosystem, which, remember, has spent a fair bit towards manufacturing surgical gloves in mass. On that note, Shaz, thank you so much for joining us and breaking down some of these insights. But moving on to news from real estate next, South India's housing markets have delivered a mixed performance in the second quarter of 2026, with Bengaluru and Hyderabad standing out even as the broader residential market has slowed. Bengaluru was among just 3 cities nationwide to post annual sales growth, with home sales inching up 1% year-on-year to over 15,200 units. Hyderabad also bucked the trend, recording a 2% rise in sales to nearly 11,300 units. Chennai, however, saw demand soften, with sales falling 9% to just over 5,100 residential units. Developers, meanwhile, are bullish on both Bengaluru and Hyderabad, with new launches surging 41% and 53% respectively. Chennai, on the other hand, saw launches slump by 38%. And as we have been reporting, its premium homes, those priced above 1 crore rupees per unit, that continue to dominate new supply across all 3 southern markets, thereby revealing that missing middle of 75 lakh rupees per residential unit is conspicuous by way of its absence, and that the homes that are doing well on the sales front are those that are priced 1 crore and above. With that, it's a wrap on the show today. Thanks so much for watching. South Central will be back same time, same place tomorrow with more news and updates from South India. But for the moment, it's goodbye from us.